Welcome to the Mindset, Marketing and Money podcast, hosted by me, Dean Seddon. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Welcome back to the podcast. It's Dean here, and today we're talking about rejection and that fear of rejection, that fear of being called out, criticized, the works. This is a major deal that stops people from moving forward in their business, in their careers, because they are terrified of negative impact. And I did a post a few days ago, and I'll just read a couple of lines of it because I think it's quite useful for summing up what we're going to talk about. You're letting a 2-letter word hold you hostage. No isn't a death sentence. It's just part of the process. You're rejecting yourself by not even trying. Now, when you start out in business, you are optimistic, you are upbeat, you are excited, and then you suddenly realize that actually this journey of entrepreneurship, this journey of building a business is actually constantly innovating, improving. You fix a problem and basically you're trading problems and opportunities constantly. And the perception that's out in the world is it's exciting. You get to go to all sorts of tropical locations. And of course, then you see the reality of this problem, firefighting, doing all that stuff. And you can get quickly quite jaded about it. But one of the things that many people get stuck on is this kind of rejection or no or fear of failure. You know, I've been on LinkedIn marketing myself and building my personal brand now for almost 10 years, taking it really seriously. And in that time, I've had people troll me, I've had people criticize me, I've had people attack me. Not every day, not every month, not every year sometimes. I can't even, some of them, at the time I felt were like soul destroying or could like literally end my career. And here I am today in 2024 and I can't pinpoint any of what they are. And I think one of the things we have to get used to, one of the things we have to get used to is being ready and being accepting that rejection is part of the process of building your personal brand. It's part of the process of winning new clients. Failure is part of that process too. And often what happens, and I see this all the time, I actually say this in my workshops when I'm speaking. You know, last week I was in Dublin and I spoke to about 100 people in a room talking about how they could build their business on LinkedIn. And one of the things I said, and it's a funny story and I like to share it because I think it illustrates it. Sales and marketing is the only field where a failure rate of 95% is not bad. A failure rate of 95% is not bad. And if you translate that into architecture and you asked an architect, how often do your buildings stay up? If the architect said, well, 5% of the time my buildings stay up, you would be horrified. And we know that a lot of sales and marketing doesn't have an obvious, clear, identifiable end goal. We know this. It doesn't mean that something hasn't happened. And I think Rory Sutherland's got a great clip on YouTube about this, about that not every marketing activity has a clear outcome. So we might be doing lots of LinkedIn posts, we might be doing lots of things on LinkedIn, messaging and all that kind of stuff. We don't fully appreciate or know the wider impact that stuff is having. What we see is a tiny metric, and it might be I've sent 100 messages and 4 or 5 people have come back. I've put a post out, I've put 10 posts out and I've got 1 lead. So what happens is, and we call it a failure rate, 95% failure rate, or some people say, well, 3% of the marketing actually works. Whatever number you put to it, the vast majority of your marketing efforts will not deliver a visible or tangible result. And so often what happens is we get into this weird scenario where we know that marketing is selling is a numbers game to an extent. But then when it comes to actually doing it, we kind of fall over. And I've seen this firsthand working with some people where I say, right, you've got to talk to 25 or 15 people per day. Usually I say 15 people getting started. Every single day you're going to talk to 15 people. And I have people who come back to me after one day and they've not done 15. And I go, why have you not done it? It wasn't working. It wasn't working. And it's like, no, this is not. We sometimes what happens is the fact that we don't get positive answers makes us believe that we're doing something wrong. If your hit rate, if your success rate is 1 in 3 in 100, you have to do 100. And sometimes you have to do 200. And so this fear of not getting a result, fear of rejection, fear of failure actually creates the failure. And lots of people go through this. And the issue is we're not strong enough, or we may not be strong enough to actually deal with the rejection. And so we avoid or evade any form of rejection. So the fact that, you've been engaging with lots of people on LinkedIn, you've had some good quality conversations, you duck actually asking them, could we have a conversation? Because you don't want the rejection. I've seen this many, many times. So what happens is, we think about no as something horrific. And I'm not advocating here that we just pester people. What I'm trying to get to is the bigger point that rejection is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign you're moving forward. Because every rejection you can learn from, every rejection you can adapt from, and every rejection is leading you to a better answer. And I see this very often when people outreach that they quit because, they've sent 10 messages and got no responses. But rejection is just a natural part of doing life. It's a natural part of marketing. That part of what there are going to be people who don't want what you've got, who don't like what you've got to sell. They don't like your message. That is perfectly normal. But what happens is we see that and go, oh, I better stop doing this. Now, I'm not advocating you stick to a process, so stubbornly, even when it isn't working. But what I am saying is most people quit on a process before they've even seen it work. They basically quit because they can't handle a few negative responses. They haven't got a thick enough skin. And because rejection feels like something's wrong, they assume that there is actually a problem. Rather than see, actually, just rejection's part of it. The reality is, I only need 3 or 4 people to buy from me. So if I only need 3 or 4 people, I might have to talk to quite a lot of people who are not the right people. There are people who see my posts every day and scroll past it because they think it's boring, right? But I don't not do it because of those people. I do it because of the people who do find it interesting, who do find it engaging, who do think I've got a point that they get benefit from. I'm not doing it for the no's. I'm doing it for the yeses. And what happens is we let the no's determine our behavior. We let the no's determine our emotional state. You can learn from a no. You really can. I'm not saying literally, oh, somebody said no thanks, so I don't do it again and I learn and iterate. I mean, if you've sent 20, 30 outreach messages that are fairly similar and you're not getting any bites, maybe you should tweak it a little bit. What I'm not saying is you send one message get a no, and that's over. We're just really missing the point here. And I want to normalize this whole rejection. I want to normalize it because it is part of the process. It is part of the process. When you were in school, there were people you got on with, and there were people who you didn't get on with. And there are people who you never spoke to, right? That's just the reality of life. And sometimes we go through life and we have to go through these places where somebody says no to us. And that's not terminal. That's not the end of the world. That is just a stepping stone on the journey. Richard Branson, he's had many, many no's, but he didn't let the no's hold him back. Every successful entrepreneur you will ever meet has gone through a series of no's. And when it comes to putting yourself out online, putting yourself out on social media, what happens is we try to optimize to get as many yeses as possible. So we don't want rejection. To avoid rejection, we avoid saying anything of any substance. To avoid getting any rejection, because a rejection is such a big hang-up for a lot of people, we'll avoid saying anything that could potentially, on an outside chance, with the wind blowing a particular way, could potentially mean that somebody goes, I don't want that. Right? And instead of going, how do I write my stuff so some people, a minority of people, really want it? We actually start putting stuff together that people won't reject it. And that is dangerous, because what happens is you start to compromise your message, you start to compromise what you're selling, all to avoid rejection. It's a fear of losing. It's a fear of loss coupled with, bluntly, a thin skin. Because we think rejection is not normal, we're not prepared for it mentally, emotionally. So what happens is when it comes, it cuts and it hurts. And, it's like a scab where you start picking. But when you start to realize and you reframe it, and this is, I'm not into, woo-woo stuff. But when you start to reframe it and go, yeah, let's be real about this. I'm going to have to put out my offer, and some people are going to have to see that it's not relevant for them. It's not what they want. It doesn't fit their needs. I'm not doing it for the people it doesn't fit for. I'm doing it for the people that will. And so, it's a bit like, I'm going to set up a store, and I don't want to reject anybody. So I'm not going to say who the store's for. I'm not going to put out that message and say I can help these people, because what if other people see it and think it's not for them? So this rejection with a fear of loss can actually become very, very crippling. It can become disabling, and it can destroy somebody's business. Because what happens is your personal feelings, your emotions, and protecting your feelings and protecting your emotions becomes more important than getting the success you want. And so what happens is in the goals, if you imagine a list of goals, you've got a piece of paper with your list of goals, and at the top is, financial freedom, time back, that luxury holiday, blah, 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 blah. All of those things you put on that list, whatever that is. What happens is when that fear of rejection and fear of loss is really strong, you actually put it to the top of that list, and it becomes more important than everything else. And then you get resentful, you get hurtful, you get jealous of other people, you get angry at other people who are prepared to basically say and do the things that allows them to communicate who they're for. So this whole piece about rejection, this whole piece about avoiding rejection, I mean, literally, you're sending messages to people saying, I've got a program, I think it might be a fit for you. People will not stop doing that because a couple of people say no. I wrote a whole step-by-step piece for my email newsletter of how to get clients in the next month. And I told them exactly what to do. And somebody messaged me in and said, wow, it's brilliant. This has worked. And somebody actually asked me, how do you deal with the no's? I'm finding it really like demotivating when I get no's. And, I was probably a little insensitive in the way I replied, because I said, you just have to deal with it. Just get over it. There's no other way. And you do become desensitized to it. You do become desensitized. I remember once I did a post and I misjudged it. So I was trying to be funny and I misjudged it. And somebody commented on my post and said, Dean, I've been following you for a long time, but this post really, I can't remember what it was exactly. But basically I'd misjudged a post, which can happen. And this person took issue with me over it. Somebody who'd been an staunch advocate of what I share. And that cut very, very deeply. And I had to go on a bit of a reflection about that. And for a few weeks afterwards, I was very cautious about what I shared to avoid that rejection. And eventually my post went very wishy-washy and middle of the road because of it. And then of late, I've just gone, do you know what? I have to be me. I have to just be me. If people don't like it, if sometimes my humor is a bit weird and they don't like it, they're eventually going to find that out anyway. So they might as well find it out up front. And you get to a point where you go, actually, I've had enough of this rejection that it feels normal. And I can accept that it feels normal. It's a natural part of life. We know this in our heads, but the problem is that we're emotional creatures, and those emotions are pretty hard to control. And when somebody rejects you, if you're not used to it, if you're not comfortable with it, if you've not experienced it regularly, notice what I said there, if you haven't experienced it regularly, it becomes a major deal for you. And, I can remember, I'll give you an example. I had a client and they started posting on LinkedIn. And, they had uni mates and all sorts of people on their LinkedIn. And they started getting lots of attention. And some of their old uni mates go, hey, you got nothing better to do. You're posting on LinkedIn all the time. And that really wounded my client. They were like hung up on it for ages. And like, maybe I should stop posting for a while. And all of this stuff went through. And I had to just give them tough love and say, you don't even care about what these people think. They have no impact on your business whatsoever. So what you're doing is prioritizing the opinions of people you've probably not seen in 15 years over the fact that you're being highly visible in your target market. And it took a hell of a journey for people for that client to actually get to come to terms with that and get used to that kind of level of visibility. They'd never had it before. They'd never had that level of visibility where people were seeing them and stopping and commenting on their stuff. They'd never seen it before, and it felt very uncomfortable. And some of you listening to me would go, I'd love for that to happen. Yeah, but you would. I would. But what happens when you get negative comments? What happens when, look at like people like Taylor Swift and people like that, and they're putting their stuff out on social media. And yes, there's a whole load of, people commenting on Taylor's posts and stuff, saying how they like her and blah, 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 blah. But in amongst them, there's people who hate her. Does she stop posting because of the people who hate her? Does she stop saying what she wants to say because of the people who don't like her, who won't buy her stuff, won't show up for her events, won't listen to her music? Does she stop doing all that stuff for them? No, of course not. And we know that's true for major celebrities, but we have to accept when we go online, we might not be a celebrity, but we're operating in the same way. We're putting ourselves out there, sharing our ideas, sharing how we can help people, sharing all of those things. And some people are going to like it and some people aren't. And, at least in the early days, little things will cut. I'm not sure you may, I think there's a clearer way of saying this. You get a comment saying, I think there's a clearer way of saying this. I've had that one once. And it's like, maybe I'm not very good at this posting thing, but what have I done? Blah, 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 blah. You just got to get over it. The best way to get over it is to go through it. The best way to learn something is to do it. The best way to overcome this rejection is not to run from it. It's not to shy away from it. It's to run into it. Literally run into it. You are going to have to outreach and get no's. You are going to have to post and some people not like it. I did a post a few weeks ago and I obsessed about it a little bit. I did a post. I thought it was good. I enjoyed putting it together. So for me, either way, I loved the post. I thought it was good. Right? I know I'm not the best judge of my own content, but I enjoyed writing it, and that's part of the process. You should enjoy what you're doing. If you're not enjoying what you're doing on LinkedIn, you're doing it wrong. And that doesn't mean it's always fun, by the way. Sometimes you have to do things you don't like. But I enjoyed writing it. I lost 21 followers. I lost 21 followers because of that post. And I was like, oh, and it was like that scab, where you pick it, who might they be, and all this kind of stuff. And I obsessed about it for a little while. And then I did another post, and it was kind of in a similar vein, and I gained 54. So imagine what I would have done if I'd ever let that loss of 21 followers hit me, influence me, direct my actions. It's crazy. It really is crazy. So the best way through rejection is to accept it's going to happen. And if you're really pushing boundaries and pushing forward, it's going to happen regularly. And actually, I'd encourage you to face rejection. Go and get a ton of rejection. It will make your life so much easier, because running from it basically means you're unprepared for it. Running from it means that basically one day it's going to hit you hard, really hard, and cut really deep. It's better to go, let's just face it now. Let's just do some things that actually not provoke people, not attack people, not do things to literally, but, you're going to have to send a few messages and get a few no's. You're probably going to get more no's than yeses, but that's okay, because 3 yeses a month probably makes you all the money you need to make. 3 yeses a month is all you need for most people. So you're doing the work, you're dealing with the no's, you're dealing with the rejection because you want the yeses. Small number of yeses equals success. And what happens is, because of some no's, we are prepared to elevate our emotional safety, our protection from rejection to the top of our goals list. And then we move the financial freedom, the impact, the time back, the enjoying what you do, all of those stuff get moved down your goal list, because number one, top priority, don't get rejected. Look, I hope this has helped you. I've been through this. It's not nice. There's no workaround. There's no kind of stuff. You just have to go through it. And I really hope you do. I hope you embrace it and go, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to get rejected this week. Seriously, write it down. I'm going to get rejected this week, but it's okay. It's okay, because that's part of the process. And as soon as you start getting comfortable with it, everything gets easier. Everything gets easier.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Mindset, Marketing and Money Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified about future episodes.